what's so different about this versus everything else out there is how it helps you mentally, your mind
Definitely.
state. How do I start an energy drinks company where there are millions of other energy drinks out there?
Hi, I'm Nicole and welcome to The Big Chat. And today I'm very excited to be introducing you to a personal friend of mine and, entrepreneur to say the least, my very good friend, Ralph.
Hello.
Hello, Ralph.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Yeah, excited.
Are you really well because you're drinking IKÓ?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, thanks for the ad there. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So, we're going to hear to talk about this and, what I've been doing a bit. And,
Absolutely. Well, people might be wondering why we've got all these cans everywhere, all over
Yeah.
the desk and, this beautiful packaging. But just to tell you a bit about it, I met you coming up to 2 years ago now.
Yeah, God,
we
it was
both did a very
long
exciting experience. I know, nearly 2 years. I know, made it this far. But we did a very exciting experience together called the Hoffman process, didn't we? So that's where we met. And the Hoffman process, for people that do or don't know, is quite intense. It's quite full on.
Yeah.
It certainly gets rid of the cobwebs, let's put it that way. And we came out of that process and we were all very much, the people that did it, really enlightened in one way or another.
Yeah, I think you could pretty much use that word.
Yeah.
They're really quite extraordinary, life-changing experience.
Yeah, and we were very much in a zone of, right, this is what we want to do. This is clarity. This is where we're heading. And Rafe was very excited about, at the time, all I knew, yerba mate, some things, some stuff that was going on in rainforest.
Yeah, back then it was like a proper pipe dream.
It really was.
It was a long old time ago. And it's taken about that long, obviously we'll kind of talk about why.
Yeah.
To set it up, and we've only launched about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
And it's here.
It's here. It's finally here.
It's literally here. And so it was very exciting for me to be able to talk to you on this, because obviously we love talking to people in business. We love talking to entrepreneurs. I love talking to my friends. Yeah. But equally, I think this is a really inspirational story for people to hear about how literally an idea that was just an idea. And it was just, I still remember conversations that we had, and you had lots of people about this idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've made it happen. Yeah, well done, you.
Thank you.
Because you've made it happen.
Thank you.
And it looks phenomenal and it tastes phenomenal.
Thank you.
And just so tell us about it. How did this all act like I was never here and I know nothing? Tell me from the beginning.
Well, because of course you've heard no end of it. But so just over 2 years ago now, around about the time that we met at that course, I had just come across this plant called yerba mate, South American plant stimulant. It's essentially just a tea, a very, very strong green tea, if you imagine. So a friend of mine introduced me to it because I had just finally dropped out of 8 years working in insurance in the city. And then after finally coming to terms with the fact that that was not the life that was good for me, I took 5 months out. During those 5 months, I met you. I did that course. That was kind of a huge part of it. But just before I arrived there, this friend of mine suggested this kind of tea to kind of help me get back on the horse, because I was completely blown out, like completely burnt out after those 8 years, sort of forcing myself to try and get on board with something that just wasn't who I was. So, as a person, I've never really been a big one for any kind of herbal remedies or supplements, because for me, they've never really had any kind of serious impact. It's that classic thing when you're a kid and your parents say, eat your greens because they're good for you. And every child on earth is going, how are they good for me? I don't feel any different, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not, at that age, you're not sort of fully aware yet. But I sort of had the same thing with any sort of herbal remedy. I started drinking this though, and after about 2 weeks, the change was extraordinary. It wasn't that it was doing the work for me, but it gave me all the get up and go and the mood lift and the energy, of course, and the calm and the focus to be able to get up and start to change my life, you know, one thing at a time, whether that's getting up and actually going and sitting down to meditate, or actually writing, you know, doing my morning journaling, or actually taking just that next step in making this a reality, especially as someone who never dreamed I'd be starting a business in my life, you know. And
Did you really not think you'd be
I never thought that. No.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I when I was working in the city...
Because the rest of us could see it.
When I was working in the city, I sort of got into the idea that I might sort of end up rising through the ranks and being like a CEO one day.
Yeah.
That was my dream. And of course, over the years, that became more and more eroded.
Yeah.
As I started to realize this whole 9-to-5 gig working for the man is never going to make me happy, actually. And then it took a long time after realizing that I needed to actually take the step myself rather than waiting for things to happen. And I think the second I even did that, the second I took this time out, it was like when I had this chat with my friend, ironically enough, we were playing a really vicious game of Monopoly with one another when we had it. But there was something, you know, I'm pretty sure this is something that everyone can relate to, where you have a discussion about whatever it is, and there's some idea just seeps through the ether and ends up in the discussion. And you just there's something about it, something that you can't necessarily explain why or even begin to think how. But there's something that comes up and you latch onto it and it won't go away. And that's what this was. And by this point, I'd never even tried the tea. Right? I had no idea what the effects are. But just from her explaining them, and, you know, with my commercial hat on, I was thinking, there's something in this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started doing more research. I started drinking the stuff, crucially. And the sort of two just kept on buffering and strengthening this idea that this was possible, that I could maybe give it a go and risk it all and give up on the whole idea of being the big CEO one day, hopefully, fingers crossed, and instead actually building my own thing and starting my own journey. So that was it. And, you know, I remember the moment. It really was like that founding moment of like, this is it. This is something.
And it's interesting how those pivotal moments, you don't, you know, at the time they might be like you say, it could be something really insignificant. Yeah. But actually you look back and you're like, no, that is when it started to really crystallize.
That was literally it.
Whoa, okay, this is what's happening. Yeah. So tell me a bit about, you know, obviously your friend had introduced you to the drink. I mean, I remember when we came out of the Hoffman process, we were all drinking yerba mate.
Oh yeah, the
tea. Because you know it is an acquired taste, but actually it's one of our mutual friends. I remember buying some tea and we were all getting it together and stuff. And actually, it's nice. It's like not like a green tea, so I could drink the tea, and I did enjoy it, and it did give you that lift that caffeine can give you, but without without all the groggy stuff. Like it didn't, like when, you know, you have caffeine and I mean, I am naturally pretty high anyway. So when you have that, and coffee just makes you go a bit.
And I'm the same sort of a person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So tell me about that.
I think it's most obvious if you are that sort of a person, the difference between coffee caffeine and energy drink caffeine. Yeah. And yerba mate caffeine, because it still has caffeine in it.
Of course.
But because of a combination of the other stimulants that it has in it and also the fact that it is ram-packed to a crazy degree, full of vitamins, minerals, and all the nutrients necessary to sustain life. Right? What that means, just a quick explainer on that.
I know, I'm like, what?
There are a very, very, very few superfoods around that essentially, bar the lack of calories because it's a leaf, right? You could eat just pure matter, so it's pure carbohydrates purely for the calories with no vitamins or nutrients in it, and just drink yerba mate, and you would be able to lead a healthy life.
Wow.
That's the idea, because all of the stuff you need outside of just calories to keep you going is contained in this stuff.
Okay.
So it's off the scale good for you.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right. So let's get into this. So
Yeah.
we have a situation where you've given up on the whole CEO thing. I hear that because there is a bit of a mourning process when you realise that you're not going to be an employee and you're going to go and do it. It's like starting again, really, isn't it? It's like being
totally
reborn. You've got to rewire everything, all the rest of it. So that's all happening. But obviously, you've come across something that you've always been enthusiastic about this. You deserve every success with this product because you are you just light up when you talk about this, and you always have done. And I know that from the very first time I met you. And also, you're a living testament to it because it has helped you on your health journey.
Totally.
So take me back a bit more to, when you're saying there's all the nutrients and everything that goes into it, because a lot of us, we just buy energy drinks and we don't necessarily know.
Sure.
So can you have a little bit of a history lesson here, please?
Yeah, sure.
Just
On the plant itself.
Yeah. Just
So
what was it that made you fall in love with this product, really?
So yeah, okay. So basically, first off, I swapped it out because I already felt like I had enough caffeine in my day.
Yeah.
I swapped my morning coffee out for yerba mate.
Yeah.
And just that was it. So one cup of yerba mate a day. And it was after those 2 weeks, I then went back and had a coffee, and then I noticed the difference. And what the difference is, quite simply, I think the best way to describe yerba mate is you get the buzz of caffeine combined with the joy of chocolate. I'll go into this in a sec, exactly why and how that works. And then you get the calm focus of sort of something you might attribute to Zen.
That's the important bit as well.
That's the really important bit. How that works in terms of the contents of yerba mate, the nutrient contents. Caffeine is caffeine, which we all know and familiar with. It's probably the most recognizable xanthine, and a xanthine is a naturally occurring stimulant. Theobromine is the second of 3 xanthines that it has. That people may recognize, that's in chocolate, and it's actually the thing in chocolate that makes you feel good when you eat chocolate.
Is it?
That's it. Yeah.
I did not know that. I just thought it was just because it was just chocolate.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. So the science behind chocolate being delicious and just chocolate is theobromine.
Wow, okay, cool.
The third bit, which is lesser known, unless you have asthma, you may know it, is called theophylline. And theophylline is a vasodilator. So how that works is that it's expanding your capillaries that allows your body to absorb more oxygen as you breathe normally. So that more oxygen means it keeps you calm and stops your brain from freaking out. So the combination of those 3, the theory goes at least, is what's responsible for giving yerba mate this very unique sort of euphoric sort of a buzz. And a euphoric buzz that doesn't just sort of send you off feeling great, but not really particularly functional.
Yeah.
It's the kind of euphoric buzz that you're also got this incredible level of mental focus where you can concentrate for longer, whether that's because you're working or because you're reading or because you're relaxing or because you're in an interesting conversation, whatever it is. It aids all of those things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And did you find then, so when you were drinking more of it, like you'd obviously discovered it. So you discovered it, then you go and do something that everything's starting to get more clarity in your life anyway.
Yeah.
So things that you're working on yourself, and sort of obviously you've mentioned a few things there like meditation, journaling, we're both fans of. But also, did you find then that you were drinking this and while you were thinking about what you wanted to do with it and drinking it and experiencing these effects?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was sort of a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Right. So the more of it I was drinking, the more I was able to focus on sort of manifesting the kind of a life I now wanted.
Yeah.
And then the more I sort of was realizing how much was helping, and then so on and so forth.
Brilliant.
And it's just the more and more and more and more clarity.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, nothing can ever be the thing that does all the work for you.
No.
That is always going to be up to each and every one of us to do.
Absolutely.
But if I was asked by anyone, if there was one thing that was just gonna assist and support me, once I've chosen to take all the steps to be the person I want and get where I want to be, this is it.
Yeah, and it's the same. And it's the same with all things that are good for us, isn't it? It's like exercise or being outdoors or walking or spending time with positive people that we enjoy their company. It feels good. You get the benefits, and you give more. So it's just it's a reciprocal thing, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, so that's great. And whereabouts does it come from? This I just want to talk about the yerba mate thing for those that haven't really have not heard of it. And where does the yerba mate? Where's it origin from?
So it's from South America, specifically the region at which Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil all meet. So that's the sort of broad growing region. And each of those countries, as a result, have varying versions of the same tradition of drinking yerba mate.
Right.
The way that it's traditionally drunk
It's not like this out of a can, is it?
No. Interestingly,
I know
no. So but it's very different to even just preparing a tea or a coffee.
Okay.
There's quite a specific process
Like a ritual.
to it. It is like a ritual. There's a sort of ceremonial to it. It's a casual ceremony, but a ceremony nonetheless. There's a correct way of doing it. So, funnily enough, one of the things, because originally what I was thinking is I'll just bring yerba mate to the UK in a big way by sending the tea. But then what immediately became apparent is that the traditional way of preparing it with a gourd, which is a dried out husk of a kind like a squash, for example, or you can get a clay one with this bombilla, which is a special kind of a straw with a filter on the end, and then you have to sort of pour in the yerba mate leaves that will go everywhere, and then cover it with cold water, let that soak in. Then you have to heat the water to precisely the right temperature, which is no greater than 82 degrees Celsius and no less than 60. Or, you know what I mean? It's complicated. This is not like banging up a pot of coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very, very different. But then that ceremonial does prepare a very strong brew, but it doesn't mean that if you don't prepare it like that you won't get the benefits.
Okay.
So it's a tradition piece. So in the end, what I wanted to do from a commercial perspective is make it very, very accessible so that everyone can enjoy the benefits without the intimidation of this very in world and very in kind of
and a bit of a process.
ceremony.
People like me are going to like fall flat and things like that.
Exactly.
It's just,
Exactly.
I'm just going to switch off.
And let's face it, most of us kind of are a little lazy when it comes to that kind of thing, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So I just needed to make it super accessible. So what we use for this is the extract form.
Okay.
Which is essentially still got all of the good stuff in it.
Amazing.
It's just removing all of the matter of the leaf, and you're left with just the nutrients.
So when you get to a point where you're like, okay, right, I've got clarity, I want to go forwards, I want to do this, I've got this amazing drink, it's making me feel good, I want to change up my life, I want to switch it up. Like for a lot of people, that's what's next?
Yeah.
What came next after that? Because
so interestingly, this is a really interesting question, because it's one that I'm actually asking people to tell me the answer to, right, in lots of different ways. The question is in what context is this best used, right? Or what contexts does this work best? And that's where the sort of piece of how do I start an energy drinks company where there are millions of other energy drinks out there. There are also loads of other natural, healthy energy drink options out there now. Yeah. How the hell do I differentiate this, right? So I think the main thing is that most energy drinks these days are, if they're not to do with sort of motorsports and high octane, they're to do with generally sports and fitness and wellness. With this, because yerba mate's got such a specific sort of an effect, something that's has often been attributed to helping people with their creativity, as much as it is to do with concentration and physical well-being. I think it's an interesting opportunity for me to ask the audience, literally, how are you using this? Yeah. And giving some people some ideas, of course. I had one person come back to me and tell me that they were drinking it to help them to meditate.
Wow.
which was a wonderful
Yeah.
different view on an energy drink.
Yeah, definitely.
That actually it's something that will up your focus, but without kind of tripping you
jitters.
out, if it makes sense,
Yeah,
without
it
the
does.
jitters. So they're kind of perfect aid to meditation in that sense. There are other people who do drink it for a very, very specifically creative point of view.
Yeah.
Other people who are drinking it, sort of computer programmers, it's already a bit of a thing over on the continent. In Germany, computer programmers out there will drink yerba mate in order to keep them mentally focused on this incredibly, high octane, above the shoulders, high frequency, complicated stuff that they've got to be on, where a tiny single mistake might screw up the entire thing that they've been working on for God knows how long. So the applications at the moment are so many that it's created a really great problem for me to have right now, which is how do we work out precisely who the target customer is going to be?
Absolutely.
Right? I think the answer is there's everything to play for right now.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty good idea of who that is, but I think what's so different about this versus everything else out there is how it helps you mentally, your mind
Definitely.
state. Right?
And it's the only way I can describe it, my experience of it, is it's clean. It feels clean. And even, I mean, I like energy drinks, and especially now I'm not drinking alcohol. It's like, it's nice to have a little pick me up of something that's not, my glass of wine is gone. So a pick me up is good for me. And this is just a very clean version of that you can have first thing in the morning, but you could also have in the evening over ice. And it looks fantastic. This. I've told you how. I love the branding. I think it's on point.
Yeah.
So I mean, but when you first set up, when we're going back to sort of nearly 2 years ago, when you literally came out, you've that's an amazing thing that you've got the product. What did you have to do next without telling us all the tricks, obviously, of what you do? But, what was the skills that you had to really call on as Rafe, to get this off the ground?
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to tell people about.
Absolutely,
really, because a lot of people think they can't do it.
Totally. Right. Okay. This is definitely something I want to talk about because, as I said before, I never pictured myself as someone who could do this. I mean, the main battle, it's every day as well. It hasn't gone away yet. I'm not sure it ever fully will. Is just the basic level self-belief. But, how I think about it now is just the courage to get up and do the next thing. Definitely. Even though, in so many ways, it's true that I have no idea what the next thing should be. Because I've never worked in the drinks industry before. I've been learning all of this as I go along. So I think, way back, what I started to do, I think, what I see as the first true real thing that I was doing where I was starting a business, if that makes sense, was I just started writing down all of the ideas, which very slowly became a business plan. And, somewhere in there, I started thinking about the financial side of it and how that would all make sense. But 99% of it was just thinking about the idea.
And you talked to a lot of people as well, didn't you?
I talked to loads of people. That's the other thing.
You really did.
Well, that's the second thing I was going to say, but I think that first step is so crucial because it starts to make it real for you.
Yes.
Because I knew that if I started talking to these experts who'd been working in the drinks industry for, frankly, any time longer than me, that I was afraid, and I think kind of rightly cautious, that I might be frightened off the whole idea when I have a conversation with someone who's going to be like, well, you've got to think about your margins, you're going to think about, who's your third-party logistics provider, and oh my God, that's so complicated, and who's going to do your branding? That's really expensive, by the way. You know what I mean? That's often the kind of conversation that you can have at an early stage. Yeah. So I think it's really important. Yes, of course, you have to have those conversations, and you should, because those are the ones that are going to help you most. But be very, very gentle with yourself as to when you're going to have those kinds of conversations, because acknowledge that the whole thing, it is really scary, and it's okay to be really scared.
Yeah, it is.
So I sort of felt like I needed to treat myself like a bit of a precious object in a way in those really early stages. Build up some confidence, and at least I didn't need to know about the drinks industry. All I knew I needed to know inside out, 1,000% was my product and what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So once I knew that, then I could have a conversation with anyone, even the really terrifying ones where people tell you that you're bound to fail, which is, there unfortunately are people out there who will give you that chat.
Yeah. They're great.
They're
we love
great,
them.
aren't they? Brilliant.
So
aren't they?
good
Really,
for business.
really helpful.
Really good for you.
Really productive.
Just personally love those people. Don't have many of them on the show, but yeah.
Oh, quite right too. So, but it meant that after not very long at all, I was able to have those chats.
Yeah.
But be in the confidence that, okay, there might be some useful advice buried in the kind of just nasty criticism.
Yeah.
And keep going and keep going.
Yeah.
And keep changing and adapting the plan.
Did you? I mean, we're joking a little bit about it, but did you have many of the sort of haters at the beginning that were like a bit like, oh, what are you doing there? You don't know what you're doing with that, and all of that. Because I mean, I don't mind that. You know, you do get that.
Yeah, of course, exactly.
But did you have much of that?
There wasn't a huge amount.
Good.
No. I mean, there was one or two, and I think that's always the case. I think most people, I imagine, setting out to do
protective
their
of you
thing.
as well. Some people are protective of you, aren't they?
You know, to be honest, bless her. I love my mum, but she was the single most negative person about all of it for a long time because, of course, she's terrified.
She's
that you're
worried.
Just going to be
she
broke forever. He's going to be in debt, and oh god, you know, being living on the street and everything. And that's just what mum's job is to worry, right? But yeah, you know, things like that, which are very, you know, we all listen to people like our mums, or whether it's an old mentor or our close friends, and they're always going to be the ones who are most frightened.
Yeah.
So in a way, subconscious way, it's unsurprising that they maybe want to kind of end up putting you off a bit from doing it.
What was some of the best advice you had at the beginning when you were sort of, you know, so like you say, you've got past that sort of self-belief. Well, not past it, but it is something you have to work on. And actually, I was having a conversation with someone this morning just about that's a consistent thing. It just keeps going. Yeah. It's just constant. But what was some of the best advice that you had at the beginning? You know, what gave you even more of a kind of, let's keep going. Yeah, because there are things, aren't there?
There are loads. I mean, that was the vast majority of it. Was incredibly supportive advice, and I think, you know, the things that really gave me a boost early on were just people going, "Wow, you've really got something here."
Yeah.
So I spoke to the best chats I had like that, and I still do to this day, is just speaking to other food and drink entrepreneurs my age.
Brilliant.
You know, and often my level of experience as well.
Yeah.
So the wonderful thing about the food and drink industry, unlike I think any other, is that entrepreneurs in food and drink are very often people who just say they've got their jam which they make that everyone loves, and then some day someone goes, "Oh, why didn't you sell this?" And they go, "Yeah, why don't I sell this?" And then they're just in their kitchen making more of this jam to sell, you know, at a marketplace at first, and then so on and so forth.
That makes me think of the guy that was on Dragon's Den. Who was that guy that made that amazing sauce? And
the reggae
sauce. I mean, come on,
Roots,
Levi Roots.
That's a dream.
But do you know what I mean, isn't it? But that's how
it works in that industry. So I think, like, it's speaking to those kind of people who are maybe even just like 6 months further down the line than I was, were the best chats, because all they want to give is encouragement, because they obviously are just going through it still.
They felt it.
Keep going, because, you know, even if one day it feels like the whole thing's falling apart, the next day very likely will be something, and that broke, and then suddenly you're selling it to a whole supermarket, say, God knows.
Yeah. And it seems to be like there's passion. It's that passion, like you said, about you really got to understand your product, what it was, what you were offering, but also you've been passionate. I mean, you are passionate about it, and I say that with love, because you know, I love the fact you're so. I sound like I'm like, God, all he does is talk about yerba mate. I mean, that is all he talks about.
That's pretty much all I talk about.
That's all he talks about. It's
exactly.
like, oh, okay, here we go. No, I mean, come on, it's you're passionate about it, and I love it, and that seems to be what is crucial. Is that passion.
Absolutely.
That really solidifies that desire and that want and that go.
Absolutely. And it's sort of that evolved for me. I mean, I think that the spark for me was what I described as that conversation, that first conversation where I first discovered this stuff, yerba mate. And just feeling that, oh, there's something here. And that's enough, actually. That's a lot of fuel in that.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's not something that everyone gets. I don't know. I can only speak for myself. But I imagine that it probably is something people can relate to. After that obsession, if you embrace it, begins to evolve.
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
more passion will come in. So for me, we haven't spoken about this yet, but this is kind of actually the reason why I'm doing this in a big way. The whole reason why I'm doing this long term, that this isn't just a quick startup, 7 years flip and hopefully make a lot of money. This is a lifetime gig for me. Because what I discovered about this plant was that it's very, very well suited to growing under the shade of trees in the rainforest. Now, that doesn't necessarily sound particularly interesting until I started thinking about... I had a conversation with my sister shortly after I came up with the idea. And she is a landscape designer, landscape architect, sorry. And we were talking about environmental issues and obviously the climate crisis going on. And, everyone in my family is quite into all sorts of technological solutions, like, oh, I wonder when Tesla's going to be made global and solar panels and all these kind of clever things. And my sister just said, well, do you know the easiest solution to the climate crisis is just to plant more trees?
Absolutely.
And it kind of silenced everyone, because of course it is. So, sorry for that little detour, but it comes back to this point that if I have this plant that is very well suited to actually growing in a crop alongside trees, that I can, in theory, if I get enough people drinking this stuff, I can start planting what are called agroforestry plantations, right? And also supporting existing ones, where the more crops you need to plant, the more trees, shrubs, and other flora and fauna you also need to plant to support that crop as a healthy crop with no pesticides, no fertilizers needed. You've essentially got an agroforestry crop uses nature's natural cycles in order to generate a crop and generate for the farmers money. So I had this huge slap me in the face moment, right? As someone who's always been fascinated by sustainability, but also interested by the inherent problems to date with it, which is if you want to be sustainable as a human being or as a business, there's a sense that you kind of have to pull back a bit or that you have to compromise.
There is, you're right, yeah.
And it's something that no one talks about, understandably, totally understandably. The difference with this is that it is not sustainability what I'm talking about. It's something called regeneration.
Yeah.
And to everyone who's going to be listening to this, look out for this word. I've got it as many times as I can possibly fit it on the back of my can, because when I found out what this was, it completely blew me away. As in, this is the whole solution to everything, right? Not just the planet and the environment, but to people, to economics, to the whole game.
Absolutely.
So with this model, if I create this drink that uses a plant that grows in agroforestry systems, the more demand I create for the drink, the more forest I need to plant. In short. So actually, I'm not drawing back. The more my business grows, the more fundamentally it's having a not just net zero impact, but positive carbon drawdown impact.
Amazing.
Which is, is that not the answer?
Absolutely.
If every single company engaged
did that,
and it goes back to regenerative agriculture, which is agroforestry is just one way. There's also various kinds of crop cycling. I forget the various different kinds now, but we don't need to go into that. But I'd encourage everyone to start to get familiar with this, because sustainability is never going to get us there on its own. It's a wonderful thing that we all need to do, but it's not the solution. The solution is by changing our entire business models, economic models, agricultural models, and start thinking about trying to get ourselves back in step with the systems that nature has always had, rather than trying to fit in new ones like
Absolutely. Well,
new
and
kinds
isn't
of
that
energy.
almost with this whole last year's lockdown?
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in it technically. We're all having to look at how we do this.
Yeah.
In all walks of life.
Yeah.
But for the planet especially, why not look at that?
Yeah.
You know, and I would say that some of those businesses that don't will start to get left behind.
Totally.
Thank God, eventually.
Quite
no
right
offence,
too.
you know, you've had your day.
But that has to
if it's
be-
damaging the planet and it's
Yeah.
damaging where we're at, it's only going to go one way.
Exactly.
You know, so this is a
The-
brilliant thing.
The thing that drives all of it is the consumer's choice.
Yeah.
You know, we can't expect businesses en masse to change what they do
No.
just because they feel it's good to do, the right thing to do. Because unfortunately, the survivalist
There's too much
in all of
association.
us,
Yeah, absolutely.
which doesn't want our business to go bust,
Absolutely.
is much more powerful than the other kind of
Yeah.
survivalist that doesn't yet realize that the whole planet is going to shit
Yeah.
right now. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
So actually, how do we basically stop this fear dialogue around it, which isn't, I think, entirely helpful. It's important for awareness, very important, but it's not helping us get to the solution.
It's not the stick. It doesn't need to be the stick.
Exactly. So what's the carrot? And the carrot, I believe, is rooted in regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
Because agriculture is the thing, our largest industry in terms of the number of people on the planet who work in it. I think it's a third of all human beings still work in agriculture.
Goodness me.
So
And that's a bit, and there's a lot coming up about agriculture
Right.
now. There's a
huge
lot,
amount.
you know,
It's becoming,
there is a lot.
it's coming into awareness as a huge
That and
center.
cyberspace.
that
Let's not
too.
talk about that now.
So, but it's coming into huge awareness at the moment as a solution potentially for the ways that we farm, because we know we realize that a monocrop of any kind, whilst it has produced so far incredibly good yields, which feed us, what isn't now meeting up, and people know it, and it hasn't for a long time, is that we've got huge food surpluses, but it's not getting to the people who are starving in the world. So what's the
Yes.
point in having these huge yields? The reality is, as well, is if you convert enough people to regenerative agricultural methods, your yields averaged out over, sure, a long period of time, but we need to start thinking in those terms.
Definitely.
Feed the world. Easy, feed the world. And the wonderful thing about regenerative methods is that you can start it in your vegetable patch right now.
Absolutely.
And see how it works, you know. But yeah, so we're
That's
going right back
amazing.
to the
No, but
original
but
question
this
you
is-
asked,
yeah, but
which
it's
was about
great.
purpose, I think.
Well, it is purpose, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
passion, but it's purpose as well. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. And this feeds into, and those are very things that are very important to you and
Yeah.
very important to a lot of people around you. And so actually, you know, not only have you started something that's yours, that's something you're passionate about and you believe in, but it's also something that is giving back, and you can actually
Exactly.
say that authentically, which
Exactly.
is, you know,
Yeah.
you really
without
can.
it being a sort of an afterthought, I think, because
Yeah.
that's my general theory, which I want to apply with IKÓ, is that the social enterprise dollar is simply worth more in investor terms, literally, than your charitable dollar. So if you give £1 to charity, that's fantastic and wonderful, and that needs to keep happening, because charities are there to support causes
Absolutely.
that don't yet wind in with our commercial cycles. right?
Yeah.
But if you can start a social enterprise and get investors to put their money towards that, then in the long term, you're not needing to keep feeding that.
You're going to speed up the process.
Right. You're creating a system that doesn't need fuel.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Other than generating the interest of customers to buy your product.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
That's great. I mean, I love it. So Where I remember when we had a conversation way back. Let's take it back to some of the fun bits as well.
Yeah.
I remember when you went and did some tasting. I remember having a tasting session at your home. Which was fun. I don't think the product looked quite the same as it does today. A lot since then, yeah. It has changed a lot since then. But I was very excited to be a part of that process. But when you actually went and met. Like the way you described it to me, let's face it, I get a bit overexcitable about these things, but it was like you were going to meet these scientists, and do you remember?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And it was and you were telling me about the process, and
that was it.
I mean, there's a whole world that's opened up to you.
It's crazy. So that was it. I mean, all these sorts of things, like how do you how do you develop a drink?
Yeah.
And like how do I? Because I was cooking all these different.
You really were
up in my kitchen.
There was a lot going on.
I had vats full of yerba mate and having to run down to the supermarket and spend like 300 quid on all the agave that they had in the shelf and in the back of the Sainsbury's, with all these very confused people wondering what I was doing, and just mixing it all up and seeing what happens. And I did it. I must have done about 120 different, 130 odd, possibly more. I didn't keep track of all of them.
I mean, you literally were. You were as well. Literally, that's important. I think people to hear is that we, some of us came round and you literally gave us different versions of, and I'm sure you did that with a lot of your friends. And it was like, do you like that flavour? What do you like better about this?
Exactly,
I mean, you were really testing the product yourself.
Yeah.
But then you went somewhere, and that process itself. I mean,
that was
really exciting.
What was interesting about that was. It was quite funny actually. So I when it came to actually developing the drink, I kind of went. I called a friend who introduced me to a friend who introduced me to a friend, and I eventually got to this liquid development company, who was fantastic. And we put in I filled in a form which was fascinating because I had to sort of describe the flavour in terms of music. What's the melody, what's the bass line,
brilliant.
What's the core of it.
Oh, I think relationships should be described.
That could work.
Honestly.
Really good.
But sorry, yes.
And then I got there on the day after all this prep, and I was expecting actually, and I'm pretty sure I definitely described it to you as you were saying, with people in white lab coats and like the test tubes, and you've got a whole team of people, and everyone's wearing goggles. And
were they all wearing goggles? It's not just a cliche. They were wearing goggles.
No, I mean, no, not at all. So I turned up, and this is just the reality of it. They're a great outfit. But I turned up, and it was like a garage unit pretty much.
Yeah.
And I went upstairs, and there was, it was technically a lab. And she mixed up it was just me and her. So no lab coats and no whole team and no test tubes. I was starting to get a bit confused. And then she mixed up just boom, 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 the ingredients. And I didn't tell her what the measurements were because she's a pro at that. She knows what things will taste like. And then she did 3 different times. And the first one we tasted was it.
Was it?
Yeah, and that was it. And so I was in there for
I'm going to have a sip. I'm feeling like
20 minutes. I eked it out to about an hour because I felt like I couldn't get this excited about something and like only be there for 20 minutes.
Really?
So it was literally 20 minutes in the lab, and that was it. Yeah. So
what a generous heart.
It was I was like, I need to sort of stick around.
To settle around, so I really feel like we've enjoyed this process.
Yes. God, that was funny.
And what were the other 2 like then? So what? Because describe. So everyone needs to go out and get some, but also the flavour as well, because it has got a lovely flavour to it.
Yeah,
and we were talking about the flavour as well, because it does taste good. And some of the yerba mates that I've had, like green tea and other things, for me, it can be a bit too bitter, but this isn't bitter. Why is that?
It's interesting. Well, because it's the raw. I think we didn't possibly mention this, but the raw tea is, as I think you did say, very, very bitter.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest challenge, is how do I get over that? And that's why I ended up doing, hundreds of these different ingredients and different versions. So what we ended up creating, there was a big trend, and still is a big trend, towards things with no sugar.
Yeah.
And that sugar is essentially the devil. And I understand that, and I understand the reasons.
A lovable devil, but a devil.
But for this,
Yeah.
you know, I think it was quite a unique proposal
Yeah.
to make something not only just taste good because it's all the raw ingredient is very bitter, but actually sort of the only energy drink, perhaps I'll say, that really does taste fantastic to most people. You know, I think on the whole, sure, lots of people love energy drinks, but on the whole, I think most people are, at least after a certain age, or perhaps it's a certain time of your life or whatever it is, people who used to drink energy drinks often stop.
Yeah.
And it's often because of the taste as well as the effects,
Yeah.
which is kind of tracks you up. So with this, rather than going for something that was sugar-free, we added agave, which in terms of sugar is pretty good. It's got a low GI, which means that it's less threatening if you have any conditions around kind of consumption of sugar. But it is still sugar. And then the other thing that we did was add lime juice to really just give it that sort of
It's really nice.
refreshing taste. But the combination of the three is, as far as everyone who's tried it so far seems to be unanimously, it's delicious. Which
It is
I was
delicious.
very pleased
It
with.
is
Obviously, I'm
delicious.
thrilled. And
I love the
agree.
brand. I love the branding. I love the way it looks. I love Rafe's hat. He's not brought me a hat. I've had
The hats will
coffee
be coming.
shop owners
Yeah.
not bring me coffee, and I now have had, but I have got the drink, and I will be drinking it with guests. You know,
Yeah,
it's
do.
amazing.
Do, and I'd love
Where
to
can
hear,
we get this? Where can we get this?
So at the moment, we are 100% online.
Yeah.
On our website.
Yeah, which is,
www.ikodrinks.com. That's IKO drinks.com.
and it can be eco or IKO.
You can say IKO.
And where does that come from?
So eco, with the, you'll see it's got an accent over the O.
Yeah.
That's not me just trying to be clever. That's actually because eco with an accent on the O is a word in the language of the tribes most associated with yerba mate, the plant.
Oh, okay.
Hundreds, if not thousands of years back.
I like that.
And the word means to be or to live.
I like
Which
that.
is really the purpose of this, is that this is not an energy drink to jack you up or boost you or, you know, it's not that. That's not the purpose. This is to live, you know.
To be the best version of you.
Exactly. Come to life and give it a go.
I love that. So we can get them online and we can get them...
So, you can get them online at the website.
Yeah.
We're going to have them available on Amazon any day now, actually.
Brilliant.
It should be in the next 2 weeks. I'd
Great.
say there'll be a big announcement when that's ready. And then what we'll also be aiming to do is get the drink into cafes, both here in Tunbridge Wells and also in London.
Yeah.
And really kind of just focus on that as opposed to getting it in the big supermarkets at the moment.
Brilliant. And social media, we can find you on social media.
Yeah, at
All the
IKÓ
normal?
Drinks. Yeah, all the normal. Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
What would be your advice before we sort of wrap up
Sure.
today for anyone out there, you know, whether it's in the drinks? I mean, this, to me, this is an amazing story because I've known you, I've seen you from the very beginning.
And the
My
whole
entire
journey.
friendship with you has been this to this, which
Yeah.
just really does, to me, people can manifest anything they want if they believe in it enough. Then anything is possible.
Absolutely.
But what would you say would be your real sort of driver for people out there that maybe are thinking about doing something but a bit nervous?
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, they haven't got funding or anything like these things. What can you do to encourage them to keep going?
I'd say, I mean, people say be fearless, which I often think isn't particularly helpful. Because we get told that everywhere by everyone.
Yeah.
So no, I would disagree with that, actually. I'd just say ride your fear.
Yeah.
Ride it. Don't let it ride you. So that's not saying don't be afraid.
Yeah.
You're going to feel afraid all the time.
Yeah.
But to live
Yeah.
is to be able to ride fear. And every single day, just waking up and knowing what the next thing to do is. And the more you do that, the more you'll actually stop worrying about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you'll just be doing what you're doing.
You'll be
in
being.
it.
You'll be being.
You'll be being.
You'll be being.
So you know, I think it's not about being fearless.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're fearless, I think the only people who are truly fearless are actually psychopaths.
I think
the inability to feel fear.
I was just thinking the only people that I know that are fearless are those running
traits.
into.
Don't be fearless.
They've got nowhere else to go. You've got to be fearless because you're about to get something bad's going to happen. So
but don't be fearless. Be learn how to ride it.
Yeah,
learn how to ride it.
Well, it's like with all things, isn't it? Regeneration, being, I think, there's a lot to be said about this. And I love the way it's been put together. I love all the information. I love what it's given back to the planet. I very much love you because I'm incredibly impressed by everything that you've done with this. And you really do deserve a huge amount of success. So everyone needs to go out there and get some.
Fingers
and it
crossed,
makes you feel great.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. It really does make you feel great. And it really does it doesn't give you the jitters, which... Yeah. Being a caffeine fiend, I like not getting the jitters. Yeah. So I think thank you for bringing us something that doesn't give us the jitters.
If there was one way I could encourage people to try it, to sort of really get your fingernails underneath why this works and why it's different, is swap out your coffee for it just for a week.
That's a good call.
And then go back to coffee and then see how you feel.
I can see a social media campaign coming on.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see you. And we are looking forward to hearing much more about... Where are we going to be in another 2 years?
Yeah.
Where are we going to be? That's a question that I'm looking forward to finding out the answer to.
A full-blown journey.
It really is. Well, enjoy it, my love. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.